Thank you. Senator Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Ranking Member, and welcome, Mr. Greer. I'm so glad to see you and appreciate your family being here and your willingness to serve our country. So I believe that too often our national trade policy over the last 35 years or so has really failed American workers. Under both Democratic and Republican administrations, the profits of big corporations, big corporate interests who want to import cheap goods have been put ahead of the interests of workers who make things in Minnesota and in America. And I think that there also is a direct connection between the significant income inequality that we see in this country and the way that our trade policy has been used to benefit big capital and multinational corporations. And as many of my colleagues have discussed this morning, it's not just jobs on the line, it is also our national security. For example, our failed trade policy means that we're way too dependent on China for many things, including critical medicines and technologies. So let me ask you, the role of the U.S. Trade Representative is a balancing act. If you're confirmed, you would be responsible for forging new trade deals, for maintaining existing export markets, protecting domestic producers from unfair foreign competition, and also making sure that other countries comply with existing trade deals. Did I capture that correctly, do you think?
I think that's right, Senator, yes.
And would you agree that part of the balance that we need to strike is that our trade policy doesn't end up pitting American manufacturers against American farmers and vice versa?
Yes, I agree 100% with that.
So in order to strike this balance as U.S. Trade Representative, you're going to have several tools at your disposal. For example, let's take an example of a factory in Mexico that is illegally suppressing wages and gaining an unfair advantage over U.S. facilities and workers in the process. You could deploy the USMCA's rapid response labor mechanism to get at that problem. Would you agree with that?
Yes, Senator, that's correct.
And if a foreign country is engaging in unfair trade practices, you can investigate that, and you could impose Section 301 tariffs, for example, on products like, for example, steel. But President Trump did this in his first term on some Chinese imports, and President Biden, I think, expanded that with respect to EVs and other critical goods, which I supported on both the Trump administration and the Biden administration. Have I captured that, do you think? This is not leading to a trick question, so don't worry.
No, you have captured it, yes.
I want to go through this because I do think that we can find common ground when you and the Trump administration is standing up for Minnesota workers and Minnesota farmers and American producers. And I think that we could work together, for example, on taking on China's cheating when it comes to trade. You can hear this as an issue on both sides of the aisle here. But if the Trump administration is going to be taking reckless steps, such as the president's blanket tariffs on our close allies in Canada and Mexico, I mean, I'm going to fight that because I don't think that that is going to be good for American workers. I think it's going to end up hurting American workers. So let me ask you how this sort of pans out in real time. You have talked about identifying new opportunities for opening up new markets. This is a long and arduous process. It doesn't just happen. I'm thinking, for example, I'm thinking of what happened with the Colombian market. There was a big effort to open up the Colombian market to American poultry products. Big deal in Minnesota. Then here comes President Trump. He announces this 25% blanket tariff on Colombia. Now, I understand that he's pulled that back. But what I fear is that the United States, with this kind of erratic and chaotic trade policy, it's going to make us seem like an unreliable negotiator and trading partner. I mean, Mr. Greer, how do you go in and try to negotiate in good faith with potential trading partners when we have a president who appears willing to tear up agreements on a whim on an issue that might be completely unrelated to trade?
So, Senator, first of all, thank you for what I think is a very good summation of how trade policy should work. It's important to remember that when we have trade agreements, they all contain an exception for measures related to essential security. And if dealing with illegal migration of criminals or dealing with fentanyl or issues like that come up, this is very clearly an issue of essential security. Other presidents have used sanctions that just cut off trade entirely. The president hasn't chosen to do that here. He's chosen to use a different possibility. But I think that's going to be important for me, if I'm confirmed, to make sure that I'm coordinating with whatever agency is implementing tariffs or other trade measure, whether it be a sanction, to make sure that we are balancing the needs of trade agreements, opening markets, protecting workers, and dealing with essential security matters.
So I think this is going to continue to be an issue of real salience and concern for me and for Minnesotans. And I think, for example, of the work that Minnesotan producers went to sort of build on those trading agreements, to build trading relationships with folks around the world, including in Colombia, only to feel as if the ground is being cut out from under them on something that is completely unrelated in their minds to what what that agreement was about. And of course, trade agreements, as you well know, we talked about this, it's not like turning on a light. And if you're a producer, you build those relationships over time. And then there's also what happens, because for every action, there's a reaction, and that ends up hurting American producers as well. So this is an area where I think we're going to have significant challenges. Thank you, Mr. Chair.